Welcome to the very first episode of the BCW Podcast Network Nonprofit Voices of Impact. To kick off this journey, we couldn't think of a more fitting guest than Jan Fisher, Executive Director of Nonprofit Westchester. With Jan's deep experience and passion for the nonprofit sector, I am just thrilled to dive into her expert insights on the social and economic impacts of nonprofits and the future of the sector. And Jan, I know we'll have a lot to share because, as you know, the Business Council of Westchester also has 150 not-for-profits as members. So you are the expert today, and we thank you for being our very first guest on Nonprofit Voices of Impact.
Thank you for the work that you do, BCW, with the nonprofit sector. It's really an honor to be here.
Thank you. So before we begin, can you tell us about yourself, your background, and your organization? This is about leadership, and so we love to talk about how leaders become leaders, and you are an incredible leader. We'd love to hear about your journey in the nonprofit sector and what brought you to your role as Executive Director of Nonprofit Westchester.
Sure. It's really interesting to say that I've been working in the nonprofit sector for 40 years because I don't even feel 40 years old.
I can't believe that. You only look like you're 25.
Thank you. And I started out as a case manager for Holocaust survivors, which was an issue that was very dear to my family, having been raised Jewish and having family that was impacted by that horrible time in history, and did a lot of work in direct service, then went into more umbrella type of organizations, working for UJA Federation agencies, which is a large umbrella organization for the social services sector. And as I grew, I realized that direct service wasn't necessarily the area for me, but advocacy, community organizing, really efforts to lift up the sector. I did end up in a large nonprofit organization here in Westchester and did public affairs, and then through that ended up at NPW, which I think the position, as many people who know me say, was made for me. And I feel really honored to represent the nonprofit sector in Westchester. Our goals are to strengthen the sector. And I do have to say, coming into this position 5 years ago, I really have learned so much from you, Marsha, about leadership, about coordinating the sector, being the voice for the sector, doing programs and planning and connecting people in a way that builds community and strengthens the sector. So I think good leaders learn from other leaders, and I thank you for that.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that perspective. And from your perspective, how would you describe the economic and social impact of the nonprofit sector in Westchester and beyond?
Yeah, so in New York State, we are really an economic engine. We contribute through employment, about $360 billion to the tax base.
$360 billion. Wow,
Yeah.
in New York. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I have to fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that's correct.
Yeah.
We are an employer, depending upon what part of the state, of approximately 20% of the workforce. We drive the economy. Our services support people to go to work, to be productive, to resolve issues that get in the way of the bottom line of business. But we also have arts organizations and culture, and these are nonprofit organizations that bring people into the community to be a part of it and to go to other businesses to support them. When you go to a museum, you tend to go to a restaurant and do other things. So from, arts and culture to the elderly and everywhere in between, we are the social fabric of the community.
And nonprofits are really used by every part of the community across the board. So you are employers, you are providers of service, you are economic contributors. In your experience, how do nonprofits collaborate with local business, government, and other organizations to maximize your input?
It's interesting. From Nonprofit Westchester's perspective, we have seen a growing understanding from the business community of how we can support each other. So we have such an abundance of services that can support businesses to do their work and to do it well. We're in a mental health crisis. We have organizations that will come in and work with businesses to provide resources. We have a growing senior population. We can provide services and information, childcare. We work, especially childcare, which I know has been a tremendous issue for the Business Council and something you've been really supportive of. When people have accessible, good childcare, they get to work and they're productive at work. So that's another way to collaborate.
So I think I think childcare is a great organization of exactly how business and government and nonprofit work together with the Business Council of Westchester and Westchester County and Nonprofit Westchester and the Child Care Council and all of the child care providers and the leadership of the governor. So that's been such a great example. Jan Fisher, my guest, the Executive Director of Nonprofit Westchester. Marsha Gordon, the CEO and President of the Business Council of Westchester. And we are on the brand new nonprofit Voices of Impact, very first episode on the BCW Podcast Network. So, Jan, I know that you work so hard to support your members. And there are many challenges that nonprofits encounter in fulfilling their missions. They're all mission-oriented organizations. What are the most innovative approaches nonprofits and Nonprofit Westchester are adopting to overcome these challenges and to stay resilient?
Yeah, I think in terms of innovation, we are really working to change the narrative about nonprofits. And we are trying really hard to make the business case for nonprofits and to get the community to understand and to dispel certain myths. So coming together as a community to talk about things like nonprofits need to market. If you want us to act like a business, we need to have the understanding that we need to market. We need to do things that other businesses do to get the word out about our effectiveness. We need to pay people well. We need to take the nonprofit sector more seriously as both an economic engine and as having a big impact on the social fabric. So in terms of innovation, I don't know that we are well situated for innovation because we're underfunded, but we are well situated to advocate innovatively and creatively together to move the sector forward and to do the things that we need to do to operate most efficiently and effectively.
When you say bring people together, I see all of the time everything you are doing as an organization to bring your members together. And as the only membership organization dedicated, entirely to nonprofits in Westchester, how does Nonprofit Westchester support your members in achieving their goals?
Yeah. So this morning was a great example. We have a number of affinity groups, and we had a chief executive officers and executive directors affinity group. And we launched
What does that mean, an affinity group?
So the affinity group is basically people who are doing similar or the same jobs in the sector can come together to offer each other support, thought leadership, have a thinking partner. And as somebody said this morning, in terms of CEOs and executive directors, the affinity group is all that, and it's a support group. Because when you're at the top of an organization, as you know, Marsha, with a board of directors and a lot of stakeholders and people that support your work so beautifully, you're still the only one at the top. And sometimes it's really important to have other people in your position to speak with, to have as a confidant. And today, with the launch of this group, we spoke about leadership. And it was led by Scott Edelman from Burke Rehabilitation Hospital.
Great. Yes, he's terrific.
And Gerandi Martinez from the Community Resource Center, and really coming together to talk about leadership. And I had to run out of the affinity group because it kept going. People kept talking. They wanted more and more. And we have a chief financial officer's affinity group. And the first person speaking before that in February will be Larry Sewell, who's the budget director for Westchester County. Really always looking for ways to work better, to work more efficiently, and to foster that collaboration. At the beginning of this CEO's affinity group, there were so many new people there. People kept exchanging cards. And, these partnerships happen when you bring people together that are doing similar work.
And I know I really enjoy, and I know this is very true for the nonprofit sector, when you see those who are more experienced helping the newcomers, the large organizations who have certain resources, helping the smaller organizations. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's critical. I mean, I have been, as I said, the beneficiary of learning from other leaders. And one thing that we're seeing that's also really important is that some of the more seasoned leaders are learning from the younger leaders. They
great.
have experience in technologies and other systems that are part of, who they are, because that's how they learned, that's how they grew up, as opposed to, somebody like me, that there were certain things that were just not part of, that are embedded in me. So being able to learn from each other, I think, is really important, especially in today's day and age where we're more hybrid, we're not with each other as much. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity to benefit from each other's perspectives and insights. And I think that's something we all need to do in general.
My guest today is Jan Fisher, Executive Director of Nonprofit Westchester, and this is the very first episode. Jan is helping us launch it of Nonprofit Voices of Impact on the BCW Podcast Network. So, Jan, looking forward to the next decade, how do you see the nonprofit sector evolving? And how can we shape that evolution?
That is a really interesting question. I'm going to have to give some thought to that. I think in the next decade that there will definitely be more heightened collaboration, more data-driven work. We have access to so much data. And one of the things that I think is going to be critical in the sector is not just having that data, but understanding how to analyze it and how to present it. And I think that will be really important in helping businesses, nonprofits, and government understand how to invest public dollars in the best possible way. We have decades of data that show what programs work, and we really need to capitalize on that to do the things that we know can really turn around intergenerational poverty, that can change systems, that can really serve people better. So I would say really capitalizing on the use of trends and data and things that we know work.
It's so interesting because when people think about the nonprofit sector, they think about services. And they don't know all of the ingredients that go into making an effective nonprofit. And also, what sparked in me when you were talking about data is what kind of job opportunities there are. So, yes, we know there are service jobs and there are healthcare jobs and there are social worker jobs and cultural jobs, but positions like data analysts, working in the nonprofit sector, may be an evolution in the next 10 years.
Absolutely.
Correct?
Yeah, and our businesses need the same types of people that any other business needs. We need the best qualified CEOs. We need well-paid CEOs because they bring money into the organization. We need all the types of operational people that any other business needs. And the better paid and the better qualified, the better more efficient our services will be, the better for the taxpayer, and most importantly, better for the people that we serve.
And it's better in attracting great people, because the old way of thinking of nonprofits was it was a great place to work, mission oriented, but didn't pay as well. But that is changing. It is changing, and I think that will be an evolution also.
Yeah, I do think it's changing. I also think here in Westchester, we are a very unique community. We have government that is so committed to the nonprofit sector. We have a business sector that's so committed to the nonprofit sector. I think there's even more opportunity. We tend to go on emotion as people, and that's the nonprofit sector perpetuated that. Give to this organization because we're pulling at your heartstrings. I think that in addition to the emotional connection, we really need to analyze how that nonprofit is running. And things like a low administration and overhead rate, which used to be the number one thing to judge a nonprofit by, that's a myth. We need to invest in core operating. We need to operate efficiently. And so if a nonprofit has a 30% administration and overhead for their core operating, that's not a bad thing. That might be a very good thing. So the way we see and analyze nonprofits also has to shift. And again, here in Westchester, we're really, really lucky.
Oh, we are leaders. We are the first movers in Westchester County, and you have made that happen. New and exciting initiatives coming up at Nonprofit Westchester that you'd like to share?
So we are going to launch this year something called Inside the Nonprofit Sector. And we are going to launch that with a program, the first in the series, that reveals data, that talks about the data of both the people we serve and how we operate. And that doesn't sound so fascinating, but it's going to be very fascinating. We're going to talk about philanthropy and resource development. We're going to talk about advocacy. We're going to talk about the things that, as the sector as a whole.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's really great. And Jan Fisher, what advice would you give leaders looking to make an impact in the nonprofit sector?
The advice I would give is talk to other leaders. There is always opportunity to collaborate. It tends to be that the people that come to the sector come to multiple organizations, and I really believe that through collaboration, we can do a better job of uniting people and serving them better. Now, not every person that comes through the doors of nonprofits are low income or impacted by poverty. We have women of all socioeconomic levels that are victimized by domestic violence. We have, many people across the socioeconomic spectrum that need our services. And I do believe that when we come together, one person who's impacted by domestic violence is going to be impacted by housing. Their children are going to be impacted. So when we come together and understand people more holistically, I think we're going to do an even better job than the awesome job that we're doing already.
Well, you certainly are. And just to sum up, how can listeners support the work of Nonprofit Westchester and your members?
I would love for you just to visit our website at...
You have a great job board, too.
Yes. We have, go to the website, go to the job board, and if you know of a nonprofit that is not a member, we do a really great job in individually supporting all of our members. And yeah, we definitely have a very robust job board.
So we are so proud to have Nonprofit Westchester as a member and as our first guest today on our brand new podcast, Nonprofit Voices of Impact. Jan Fisher has been our guest, and as I said, at the Business Council of Westchester, we're proud as part of the larger business community, because nonprofits are a type of business, to have over 150 nonprofit organizations as members, which is a unique feature for our business membership organization. And we, along with you, Jan, and Nonprofit Westchester, emphasize that nonprofits are vital economic engines. You create jobs, generate revenue, and provide critical, essential services that benefit the community and enhance the economic quality of life in Westchester. And you are just the leader. Your friends are right. You are just the leader to get this done, and it's our pleasure to be your partner. Thank you, Jan Fisher, Executive Director, Nonprofit Westchester.
Thank you so much, Marsha, and to the Business Council as well for having us here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.